Hi guys, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to assemble this lotus flower lantern. The lotus flower is a popular symbol in Chinese culture, but it's also popular in other Asian cultures, so I have two versions of this lantern in my shop. One version includes the tassel, and the other version does not include the tassel, and here is a lantern with no tassel. The tassel is a common lantern feature in East Asian countries, but is less popular in the cultures of the South and the West. So if you're not interested in the tassel, just be sure to purchase the version of this lantern without it. And I'll include links to both versions in the description below. You can hang this lotus flower or let it sit on a table like this as a centerpiece. And if you have the time, I recommend creating multiples of this lantern because look how beautiful they look hung in a group like this. Here you can see I haven't included the tassels in these lanterns, and I've made them all in white, which makes them look so graceful and elegant. Whether you're making the lantern with or without the tassel, you can follow this same tutorial for both because it's the same lotus for both, and then I'll just show you how to attach the tassel at the end of the tutorial. So first let's look at what you'll see in your downloaded file. The lotus flower itself is actually a very simple structure that's made up of multiples of these two pieces here. In your file, if you're purchasing the version with the tassel, you will see these parts. The flower itself is made up of 6 of this piece here, and then the base or the leaves is this piece here, and here is the tassel with this attachment piece which I'll call the string. Now of course you will not have this tassel and string in your download if you've purchased it without the tassel. And as with all my other designs, I want to talk about the dotted lines you see here. These are our fold lines, and as such they should be cut as dotted lines, but I know for a lot of people when you import the SVG file into your software, such as Design Space for the Cricut, these lines show up as solid cut lines. As far as I know, this only happens with Design Space. So for those of you who don't know how to fix this, what you need to do is to first click on the piece and look for the Ungroup button, which you can find under Arrange, which is here. This will separate the lines from the rest of the piece. Then click anywhere on the fold lines, and then if you click here in Operation, you'll get a menu, and here you'll need to change these fold lines from Basic Cut to Score. This will turn them back into dotted lines. And you need to do this with both the flower piece and the leaf piece. Now the last step is you'll need to click on both the fold lines and the piece itself, and then go down here and click on Attach. And this will assure that the design gets sent to cut together with the dotted lines. I don't cut on a Cricut, so please excuse me if I'm not explaining any of this correctly. I really only know the basics of Design Space, and I use it to make sure all my designs import properly, so if anyone has any more tips, feel free to leave it in the comments below. Okay, so moving on, here is what all the pieces will look like once they're cut. For the leaf piece, I'm using a gold cardstock called Kodama, which I'll link below. And I've said before, this is my favorite gold cardstock to use because it's very much like a gold foil. It's very shiny and very sturdy and easy to cut. To make one lantern, you will need 6 of the petal piece and 1 each of the string and the tassel. For the leaf piece, I use 2 pieces. If you're just going to make the table version of this lantern, I think you can just use 1 leaf piece. One thing to note here is that I'm using gold paper, which is single-sided. When I cut my 2 leaf pieces, I flipped my second piece so that I would have a mirror image of the first piece. And the reason is because they will be attached on top of each other like this, and I didn't want the leaves to exactly match. Just a small detail, so don't worry if you forget to do this, it will not affect the structure at all. And now here are the materials I'll be using. I highly recommend this tacky glue. If you've been watching my latest videos, you'll notice I use this tacky glue more and more. I really like it because it's thicker than regular white glue and it dries faster. And I've found that since it's thicker than white glue, I don't even need a paintbrush to apply it because I can control it more. And I'll add a link below for this tacky glue. And here's just some nylon fishing line that I like to use. I like the 0.25 millimeter weight, and I bought this big spool because I use it often, but you can also get the craft version of this, which I'll link below. Okay, now let's start assembling our lantern. We are going to start with the petal piece. Two things I want to point out. Notice here at the bottom there is this flap, and beside it a dotted line. This line is just a placement guide for when we attach the next petal, which you'll see shortly. And the second thing is to take notice of which side this flap is on. You can start with this flap to the left like this, but if you do, just make sure all your other petals have their flaps to the left. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to have my flap on the right. So starting with this first fold at the bottom, give it a slight fold. You don't need to do a complete fold. Then for these other two side folds, make complete folds like this. And that's it, your folding is done for one piece. Now repeat the same folds with the other 5 petals, again making sure that little flap at the bottom are all on the same side for each piece. Repeat this until you have all 6 petals folded. Now I'll show you how to attach your petals together. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using this dotted line as a guide on where to place the next petal. And the next petal is going to attach like this. So take your glue and place a thin bead of glue along that flap. Then attach the second petal like this. When we're done, you will see a hexagon formed with these triangles, so make sure these outer lines of the hexagon all line up. Squeeze the two pieces together, and after a few seconds, attach the third petal the same way. And you're going to repeat this with the next 3 petals. Now when you get to your 6th and final petal, you're going to place glue on the last flap and also on the edge of the first triangle like this. Then your last petal should fit in that spot pretty snugly. And here's the hexagon base we formed. And that's it for creating the base for the lantern. Now I'll show you how the lotus flower comes together. We are going to be attaching these side flaps together like this. And what this does is it lifts the petals up to form the bowl-like shape of the flower. So place some glue along this edge here. You can start anywhere on your flower, they're all the same. Then lift the next flap up to meet the one with the glue. Now here you may be tempted to try to match these two side petals together, but what's more important is to take a look back here and make sure this seam is flush. Don't worry if making this part flush causes your side petals on the other side to not perfectly match up. I got lucky and my seam is flush and my petals are aligned. Now just repeat this step, working your way around the lotus, and each time just holding the two parts together for a few seconds before moving on to the next one, just to make sure your glue takes hold. And notice how misaligned my two side petals are in this last part, and remember, that's okay. And that's how you create the main shape of the lotus flower. Now let's finish it off. Next, we're going to be taking one side petal and attaching it to the next side petal like this. And you're going to repeat this around the whole lotus flower. To do that, we'll be placing glue on this area. I stop my glue about halfway down this area here like this. Then take the petal across the way and pull it over to attach. Now here you want a perfect alignment, and you may have to do a bit of twisting of the petals to get this. You want these two top points to match. Then hold them together for about 15 seconds. There is some tension in this hold, so you want to make sure that glue is pretty set before letting go. And this is why I like the tacky glue for this project, because you would need to hold it for a lot longer than 15 seconds if you're using regular white glue. And after 15 seconds, you can let go and work on the next pair of petals. Then just work your way around until all the petals are glued together and you have a complete lotus flower. And with that last step, your lotus flower is done. Next, let's create the leaf base. The first thing to do is to take one piece and fold all the folds downwards like this. Then take your second leaf base and this time fold all the folds slightly upwards. You don't have to go all the way up with these folds. We are going to be attaching the two pieces like this, so the folding of the top folds upwards will help you to match up those hexagons in the center. And next, take the piece with the leaves folded downwards and put some glue on the center hexagon. Now take your top piece, and here I like to rotate it so that the short leaves on the bottom piece are not with the short leaves on the top. This is just for variation, and this is another way to avoid having the top and the bottom leaves matching too much. It might help to gather up the top leaves like this, then just match up those two hexagons. And just take a quick look all around to make sure all the sides match. Now just set this aside to dry for at least 5 minutes, especially if you're using shiny paper like I am. Next, we're going to glue our lotus flower to the base like this. So place some glue again on that center hexagon of your leaf base. Then take your flower and match up the hexagon base of your flower to the center hexagon of the leaf base. And now let it dry for about 5 minutes before we move on to the final step, which is the tassel. But of course, if you're making your lantern without the tassel, you are done. And here is a pink and green one I made earlier. If this will be a table lantern, you can curl the leaves up with your fingers like this. Just gently pull each leaf between the length of your fingers in an upward pull. And then you can place your tea light inside. And I have some string attached to my flower here, which you can just ignore. I like to use these tea lights that look like candles. Just simply place it into the center of your flower and that's it. If you'd like to see how I attach my string, just fast forward to about the 16-minute and 45-second mark. Okay, so back to the tassel. Here is the string and tassel piece. The first step is to take your string and count 20 circles from the end. Make a fold after the 20th circle. Then where you've just made your fold, fold the other side of the same circle like this. And that will leave you with this hairpin-like shape. And next we loop one side of your string through your tassel like this. I like to leave this space here so that the tassel can hang nice and loose. And And next, count down 5 circles from the top and make a fold after the 5th circle. Do the same with the other side. And now you should have this Y shape, which is the part that will attach to your lantern. Now I'm going to glue these 2 parts together. Place some glue just about halfway up from the tassel and all the way to the top before the Y split. And press those pieces together. And make sure all the circles here are aligned so you'll get a nice flat split at the top. And now you're ready to attach this to the lotus. At the bottom of your lotus flower, you'll see this hexagon shape. And this is where we'll be attaching the tassel like this. So place some glue along that whole length of that Y split. You won't need much. And then I like to use 2 corners of the hexagon as my guide so I can center the tassel. Make sure everything is evenly spaced and then press down. And just allow that to dry for a few minutes before we move on to attaching string. Now let's look at how we will attach the string. Just a note here, you can probably attach your string before gluing your tassel on, but it doesn't really matter. If your tassel string needs to be bent to lay your flower down, it can easily be bent back. So here is my lotus, and here I'm showing you with this chopstick the different places you can attach your string. Through here or through here, basically through any 2 petals opposite each other. So I'm going to loop my string through this one, then just pull it across the way and loop it through the opposite petal. Then tie 3 dead knots in your string, leaving a pretty large loop underneath the knots. You should end up with this big loop, and this is just so you're not pulling the petals too close together when you tie your knots. And the last thing to do is to fold down those bottom leaves so that they're hanging downwards, and also at this point you can curl the top set of leaves if you want to. And lastly, you just add your tea light and you're done. That's it, guys. Thank you for following along. I hope you all enjoy this one. Follow me on Instagram and Pinterest where you can see sneak peeks of upcoming new designs. Thanks, everyone.